Okay, so welcome everyone to our session today. My name is Lauren Lobdell. I'm the Vice President of Client Services for Tutor.com. We are a service of the Princeton Review, and we're very proud to bring you this Student Success webinar series that we've been hosting all fall. Today's session in particular is my favorite because we all have stress, right? And especially in this very weird new normal that we are living in since the springtime this year. And so right now, stress is a factor for all of us, and even beyond being a student, right? It's whether you're having stress in your job or having your kids running around in the back while you're trying to be on a conference call, or maybe you're doing both. Maybe you're working and going to school and parenting, or trying to figure out what your next step is at a very uncertain time. So stress management is such a critical thing for all of us, and we're really excited to bring you this topic today. In terms of how we're going to run the session, Dr. Amy Dietzman is our presenter. She has hosted the student success workshops we led in the summer, and also this whole series we've been running this fall. She is kind of an expert in this area and offers really wonderful tips. So I'm very excited to have those of you who don't know Amy yet hear from her. And then after the presentation, there is going to be Q&A where Amy and I kind of go through your questions, and we'll have a little bit of a discussion on stress management tips. So you can stay for whichever parts of the session are important to you. If you just kind of want the presentation, feel free to take off. But otherwise, we're happy to stay for about 20-25 minutes, and we'll do Q&A depending on the number of questions. I am going to pass it off to my esteemed colleague, Dr. Amy Dietzman, to take over and give you her best tips on stress management. But again, I will be here to come back and moderate, and Marcus and I will be helping with any technical questions throughout the presentation. So Amy, it's all yours.
All right. Great. Hi, everybody. Do you ever feel like this? I do sometimes, but I'm hoping I can help you out a little bit today. I am Amy Dietzman. I know that a lot of you have attended my other webinars, and you might know a little bit about me. I work full-time for Tutor.com, and before I was here, I taught high school, and I currently also teach education psychology at ASU. But let me preface this whole session by saying this. I am not a psychologist or a counselor. I do not have a degree in psychology, but I am able to share with you some tips and tricks I've learned and some that I've researched on stress, as well as the fact that I've taught student success. So today you're going to notice many tie-ins to our previous sessions. They really all connect. A lot of our topics are going to relate right back to what we discussed when we talked about time management, study skills, and goal setting. Today, we're going to talk about how to manage the inevitable stress that comes from being a student. And like Lauren said, all the other things you're probably dealing with in your life right now. And we're also going to talk about how to view stress as a positive and how to prevent some of that everyday stress in your just everyday life. So let's start by defining stress management. It is a set of techniques and programs intended to help people deal more effectively with stress in their lives by analyzing the specific stressors and taking positive actions to minimize their effects. So I highlighted the action phrases here. We need to deal more effectively. We need to analyze what is stressing us out. And then we need to take positive actions to make it better. So how do we do that? Well, first, let's talk about different kinds of stress. Not all stress is equal. I used to think all stress was bad, but stress we feel when we get excited and when there isn't a threat or fear is actually good stress. It keeps us feeling alive. If you have ever attended any of my other webinars, you know that if you've set an achievable and motivating goal, then the pressure that you put on yourself to reach that goal is actually good. But bad stress is acute stress. It comes from quick surprises that need a response. Acute stress triggers the body's stress response, but the triggers aren't always happy and exciting. Acute stress in itself doesn't take a heavy toll if we can find ways to relax quickly afterwards. Once the stressor has been dealt with, we need to return our body to homeostasis, or what we call like pre-stress state, to be healthy and happy. An example of acute stress is a job interview or something like when you get a speeding ticket. So chronic stress, though, is another form of bad stress, and it's the worst. This is the kind of stress that ages us. It occurs when we repeatedly face stressors that take a heavy toll and feel inescapable. A stressful job or an unhappy home life can cause chronic stress. And this is what we normally think of as serious stress because our bodies aren't designed for chronic stress. We can face negative health effects, both physical and emotional, if we deal with chronic stress for an extended period of time. And lastly, believe it or not, those who are adrenaline junkies, which I kind of always thought they were cool, they're actually putting their bodies through too much stress. In this picture, the roller coaster, for most of us, is good stress. It's invigorating, our hearts race, we do it, and we feel alive afterward, and then we return to our normal state. So how do you make bad stress good? Well, first off, you need to understand a growth mindset. A growth mindset is one that realizes we're all growing and we're learning, and in order to grow, it's going to be uncomfortable. It might be hard and we might fail, but we have to persist and we have to know that our effort will pay off. Making bad stress good also means that we know when we need to use our resources to help relieve that stress. And we're going to talk a little bit more about resources in a few minutes. When we can see the benefits of stress, it will help us to make it good. Just like I said, that good stress is when we can tie it to our goals. If we know the stress is temporary and we know that we're going to have a degree or a certificate or we're going to pass that test or something at the end, it changes how we think about it. We also need to recognize our strengths and abilities. We have to believe that we can get through it and come out successful. Some students see stress and pressure as paralyzing, and this leads to procrastination. But it's all about our mindset. Pressure can lead to productivity, and we're going to talk more about that too. And we need to see threats as challenges. If you signed up for school, if you decided you wanted a degree to further your career or to help you get a foot into a new industry, whatever it is, you already did the first big thing. You already said, challenge accepted. Did you know that believing stress is bad for you and stressing out about the stress is actually worse than the stress itself? If this doesn't tell you that it's all in your mindset and how you approach and think about stress, then I don't know what does. Have you ever had trouble sleeping and all you can think is like, oh, if I can just fall asleep right now, I'll still get 5 hours of sleep. 5 hours is enough. And then a little bit later you say, oh, if I can just fall asleep right now, I'll get 4 hours of sleep. And the next thing you know, you're stressing yourself out and you're not falling asleep. The same concept applies here. It's all about how we think about stress and what we believe about it. So there are researchers out there who say we need to make stress our friend. Sounds silly, but how do we do it? Well, we start by thinking, how is this stress going to help me reach my goal? When we get anxious, we tend to focus on the negative. So it's a mind shift. We can do this by envisioning what it looks like when that stress subsides. How is your life different? How are you closer to your goal? Are you in a new job? Are you finished with a big project at work and you feel like you've really made a difference? Are you living in a new house? What is the means to the end? And then look at that stress as part of your process. It's going to feel like this stressed out time and I'm not going to love it, but it's going to get me where I'm going. Okay, I can deal with it. So the most common stress for college students is financial. So I think it's important we talk a little bit about it. We hear on the news all the time about growing student loan debt, and it's disheartening. It's a stressful topic, and I know that everyone on this call is in a different place. This goes back to how you think about it. Let's think about it now. How can we see college as an investment? Well, I'm going to give you some numbers. The average student loan borrower pays about $393 a month. And I think that seems like a lot. That's $4,716 a year. College graduates earn around $30,000 more a year than their non-college graduate colleagues. Now, these are just averages, but let's just play around with some scenarios. Even if you were to get a raise or a new position after you graduate that paid $5,000 more than you make right now, you'll technically be making enough to pay your student loans. You are not going to have much left over and you won't be rich, but think of it this way. Will you be happier, more fulfilled? Will you see a path to something even better? If the answer is yes, then the investment is probably worth it. It might take time to get there, but it's a long-term investment. So let's say you get a job that pays $10,000 more than you make right now. This is still on the low end of the average, but your student loan payments are probably less than half of that. You should be able to make those payments without too much of a burden. Will you be fulfilled? Will you be doing something you enjoy? Is that worth it to you? And now picture yourself 10 years down the road. Where will you be? Envision yourself there and think about if those loan payments will really be a hardship, or if that hardship outweighs the hardship you may face right now without that degree. Remember, the return on investment may take time. And be ready to make sacrifices. You might be paying your way through college right now. Maybe you're lucky enough not to have student loans. And if this is the case, it's still a sacrifice for you and your family. Every time you make that payment, you have to know that it's worth it, that it's an investment. When you're feeling stressed, you need to know what resources are available to you and how you can reach those tools. So for financial stress, obviously your best resource is your school's financial advisor. It's okay to call this person and just ask them to talk you through it. What's on my bill? What do I need to do next? How do I fill out my darned FAFSA? I hate the FAFSA. You can call your student success advisor or any advisor for that matter and ask questions. Tell them what is stressing you out because their job is to support you. Too many students don't actually talk to their instructors. Sometimes college professors are intimidating, but most of them still care enough to help you. Librarians and resource centers are totally underutilized. They have a wealth of knowledge. If you're stressing out about a paper or an assignment, the librarians at your school will jump at the chance to help you find the resources you need. Online libraries have come a long way in the last 10 years. They have live chats, an abundance of digital resources, 24/7 hours. They have writing centers, and these are just a few of the things you might find if you log into your library. And make sure that you save that page so you can find it easily next time. And also reach out to parents, your parents, or your coworkers when you're stressed and vent. Venting helps you take a deep breath and release. It also helps you put things into perspective. Also, if you're on this call, you might have access to a Tutor.com tutor through your school, your employer, or your local library. Tutors are an excellent resource for stress management to help you talk through what is stressing you out or just break down something in an assignment to make it more manageable and understandable. We offer online tutoring options for all kinds of academic and student success topics. We even have tutors who can work with you one-on-one in some of the topics I've discussed in this series. And lastly, if you don't have a mentor or a really good friend who's maybe been where you are, you should try to find someone who knows exactly how you feel and who can give you advice, talk you through what it feels like when it's over. The fact is, as a student, you're just not alone. To relieve your stress, you need to use your resources. And know your limits. Listen to those you trust. If people start saying things like, "I'm really worried about you," well, that's a sign that you might be experiencing some bad stress. You might need a break. You might need to reach out to your college or university and ask them about what options you have. but also know the difference between that normal stress that comes with being busy when you need a long weekend off or a vacation, and the kind of stress that is chronic and bad for your health. As I've talked about before, I've seen a lot of students who convince themselves that they can't handle the stress and need to take a semester off. And those students do often struggle to come back. So know your limits, know the sacrifices you're making, know when you need to make a real change. And if you're not sure, go back to my last slide. Use your resources and ask someone to help you think through it. TLC. In this case, it means talk, look, and change. Remember how I said that venting helps? Vent to someone. Talk to your friend, and then look for the silver lining. No matter how bad things are, there is always a way that it could be worse. And then change the channel, which means find a positive distraction, such as taking a long walk, taking a yoga class, doing a mindful breathing exercise, playing a game with your kids. Whatever makes you feel good, do that. This is really important. People who deal with stress the best know how to view it as temporary, as a positive, and these people are resilient. After the stress is over, they know how to reset and move on. Do you know how to reset and move on? Maybe you've had a particularly stressful semester. You took some really hard classes. You were in the middle of an audit at your job. Your kids are home, remote learning with the pandemic, and it has been stressful. But the semester is over and you've got a week off. So how do you hit reset and get a refresh before the next semester starts? Maybe one of these little activities can help. Maybe you can take a day to yourself. Maybe you take a drive and you go to the beach or a lake or the mountains. You go for a long hike. Maybe you just take a really long nap. Visit a friend or your parents and let them just pamper you. Go to a spa or get a massage. Or purchase an unlimited yoga package for a week, or find a yoga program that you can do online. Maybe none of these ideas is great for you, but just think about it and figure out how you can be resilient and hit your own reset button. To be proactive about your stress, to reduce it, and even to prevent it, consider these practices. As I have talked about over and over again, time management helps to reduce your stress. The more you plan ahead, make a schedule, and keep yourself from procrastinating, the less stress you will feel. Exercise will help you in every stage of stress. Scheduled relaxation periods reduce stress. And the key word here is scheduled. There is something about knowing you are going to get a break, and there's something about doing it regularly that helps you to feel less stress. A healthy diet. I won't talk too much here about what bad foods do to your body. You've probably heard it all before, but a proper diet can counterbalance the impact of stress by strengthening your immune system, stabilizing your moods, and reducing your blood pressure. Organization. The more organized you are in your workspace, your home, and your study space, the less stressed and scattered you will feel. Remember that the more things we have going on in our lives, the more stuff we have to keep track of. I love British cooking shows. These competition shows, I love them. And I was watching one the other night where one of the judges kept telling the contestants to clean up their workspace as they were cooking. She kept telling them that a messy kitchen was too distracting and it was a detriment to their focus. And she was right. You would watch the messy ones. They couldn't find their right spatula and they kept forgetting things that were cooking because everything was such a mess. And it reminded me of this topic. The messier and more disorganized you are, the more scattered and stressed you will feel. And limited decision-making is another topic I've discussed before. Make big decisions early in the day and take all the little stressful decisions that come up throughout your day out of the equation by sticking to a routine as much as you can. So let's talk a little bit about some of these. There's a reason why I did the time management webinar first, because it is critical to your success as a student. Even if you have a busy life and a lot to do, you will feel differently about it if you know how to manage your time. You will be able to focus on what you need to focus on, when you need to focus on it, when you know that you have the time to do all the other things ahead of you. You've planned for them, you'll get to them, and you know you will. And this is why making lists is so important. Some days I wake up and I know I just have way too much to do. So I make a list. Just writing it down takes some of the pressure off. Seeing it written down and knowing I'm just going to go through and I'm going to check each thing off, get to as much as I can, helps me to turn that stressed feeling into productivity. And sometimes it also helps to put it into perspective. Have you ever thought you had like 25 things to do one day and you make a list and you realize there's only 4 things? I have a lot. And suddenly I'm like, oh, okay, this is manageable. I can get to these things. I don't feel so stressed anymore. Does your desk look like this, guys? Well, I sure hope not, because this is not a productive workspace. Some people think that a messy desk makes them look busier, but it actually tells me that he's disorganized. He has probably forgotten about what he was supposed to do with all those things on the bottom of that stack. And if I were to ask him to find something, he's going to waste half the day looking for it. Chaos, disorder, and the unknown lead to stress. When you start a new class, get a simple 2-pocket folder and keep anything you need to print out in that folder. And then on your computer, make a new folder for all the documents you're going to produce and save them into that folder. When you're done with that class, file away those folders and start new ones. Don't keep old documents and old syllabi where they are cluttering up your workspaces. Look at an entire class and lay out your plan to tackle it. Here is a course schedule, an example one. Sometimes this kind of thing shows up in your syllabus, and I suggest you print this out. Put it into that folder I just told you to create, and then add each due date to your calendar. Figure out how you're going to break up these assignments. And I mean this, that due date is not the date that you start working on that assignment. That leads to stress because all week you'll be wondering, will I have enough time on Sunday to finish my paper? How big is that paper? How long is that paper going to take me? And you may not identify it as this, but you are causing yourself undue stress and anxiety. Instead, much better solution, schedule days throughout your week to work on chunks of that assignment. Using stress for productivity is big. Rather than letting an impending due date paralyze you, lay out your plan, make your list, add your work days to your calendar, and then go. Just do it. Use the adrenaline you feel when you've got a big assignment to do to boost you and give you the energy to focus. Remember, it's all about how you think about it. You can change how you respond by changing how you think. So I already told you that if you make a list, you will feel better about your day because there is no more unknown. You see it, you know you'll get to it, and you can focus on one thing at a time. Well, that same concept goes with compartmentalizing. Because I used to do my schoolwork in the morning, I was able to let it go throughout the day and do the other things I needed to do, like my job and then my kids. In addition, focus only on what you can control. I mean, it's true that we get stressed out about things we have no control over, and that eats up the energy that we probably just don't have. I talk about exercise a lot, I know, but exercise is probably the #1 way to be proactive about your stress and anxiety. Exercise releases endorphins. It acts as a natural painkiller, and it helps you sleep better. All these things relieve and prevent your stress. One kind of amazing thing I've noticed is that whenever I have a headache, if I just force myself to ride my bike, my headache goes away within a few minutes, and it stays away the rest of the day. I don't get migraines. I'm just talking about like run-of-the-mill tension headaches, but it's kind of crazy how it really does act like a natural painkiller. And when I'm talking about exercise, I again don't want you to think I'm talking about like go start training for an Ironman, but just get out for a walk, get fresh air, get your heart rate up just a little bit, and you will see the effects on your mental state. Routines help relieve stress because less decisions have to be made. We talked about this before, but it's worth mentioning again. The less you leave to be decided when you get tired, the less stress you will feel. Maintain your routines from day to day, and they will become like clockwork. Well, this is a tough one, but one way to get rid of stress is to turn off all the noise in our lives, and that includes our cell phones. They're constantly alerting us of things like good and bad, contributing to our stress by adding things we need to respond to or complete for someone, and sometimes we just need to shut it off to be able to take a deep breath. Recognize your stress strategies and change your bad habits. These can be behaviors learned over years, and sometimes they aren't healthy. For example, some people cope with stress by self-medicating with unhealthy things. Identify what you do when you feel stressed and determine if there is something you can do that is better. So I'm not telling you to get rid of bad habits all at once. What I am telling you is to exchange one bad habit for something better for you and see how you feel. See if you feel less stressed, and then tackle another bad habit. And know when to say no. When you're a student, you might have to limit some of the things you used to say yes to. For example, maybe volunteering or hosting big birthday parties when you can host big birthday parties again, hosting holidays at your house, planning the family reunion. I mean, these things are stressful. When I was a student in my doctoral program, I told my whole family I just wasn't up for hosting holidays for a few years. My kids didn't have huge birthday parties. We had sleepovers with a couple friends and ordered pizza. I didn't volunteer at my church or my kids' school at all. I wasn't the homeroom mom, and I didn't spend hours planning the band fundraisers with some of the other moms. I said no to all of that stuff, and I didn't feel bad about it. My kids were still loved and cared for. I still spent time with my husband and family. I still gave them all the attention they needed, and I was still present. But I did not take on extra stress that I knew I couldn't handle. My priority was to finish school. But on a side note, I will say I ended up making up for those years because I volunteered for all kinds of things once I graduated. If you like this sort of thing, I researched all of these apps and I've been playing around with them for weeks, and they're all great for forcing you to breathe, take a break, talk to yourself, and identify how you're feeling. Personal Zen is specifically for stress management and anxiety, and also has games you can play to relieve those. Happify, I probably like the best. It asks you to identify your feelings and then provides little games and activities you can do to help you with those feelings. And it also has discussion forums, expert tips, and articles. Sandvelo provides meditation exercises, and similarly, the Insight Timer helps you to take a few minutes out of your day to meditate and breathe. And I included Spotify here because Spotify has curated playlists for relaxation and study, and they even have a playlist just to make you feel happy. So a good laugh has short-term and long-term effects. When you start to laugh, it doesn't just lighten your load mentally, it actually induces physical changes in your body. Laughter stimulates your heart, lungs, and muscles and increases the endorphins that are released by your brain. Laughter also activates and relieves your stress response and can also stimulate circulation and aid muscle relaxation, both of which help reduce some of those physical symptoms of stress. Now, for long-term, laughter counteracts those negative feelings you get when you're stressed that decrease your immunity. Laughter also increases personal satisfaction and improves your mood. I told you that I learned to say no to a lot of stressful things, but one thing I never said no to when I was a student was a night out with my girlfriends, because we would laugh for hours and I would come home feeling refreshed and relaxed and it was something I could look forward to. If you have a friend who makes you laugh, schedule time with them. Watch a funny movie, read a funny book. Find a way to step away from your stress and have a good laugh. So let's go back over our checklist for stress management. First of all, change how you think about it. Make stress your friend and your motivator rather than stressing out about stressing out. Use your resources. Reach out when you need help. Manage your time effectively. It all comes back to time management. Get organized. The more you have to organize, the easier it is to get lost in a mess and get more stressed out when things feel out of control. Use your stress for productivity. Be present in the moment, focusing on one thing at a time and not worrying about things you can't control. Exchange your bad habits and responses to stress for healthier ones. Set limits with your family and friends and say no to things that are too much for you to handle. Maintain your routines so stressful decisions are limited. And lastly, remember to exercise and laugh. So before we get to questions, I just wanted to let you know that my webinar next week is the last one of the series, and it's about critical thinking and research skills. So this webinar is going to be a little more academic than these other ones I've done, but it's super important. We're going to focus on how we can be critical thinkers when it comes to acknowledging our own biases and assumptions, and how we can use credible evidence to support our claims when we write. We're also going to talk about some common misconceptions about plagiarism and what academic integrity means. So I hope you'll join me for that last one. And I'll send it back to Lauren for questions.
Thanks, Amy. That was awesome, as always, and helped me think about my stress, even though I've sat through your sessions both in the summer and this fall a couple times now. I get something new out of it every time. So
awesome.
So everyone, again, you have the opportunity now. We're going to move into questions, and we're going to stay for about 20, maybe 25 minutes, depending on how many come through. So if you want to start populating some of the questions into the question box, we're going to start to go through those. In the meantime, a couple things we wanted to note. We host webinars pretty regularly. Obviously, this has been a series that we've done once in the summer, now in the fall for students, but we host sessions for teachers, for parents, for those of you who maybe administrate Tutor.com at your school. We host a lot of different kinds of topics. So one of the best ways to know what is happening is to follow us on our Facebook and other social media channels, including our YouTube channel. If you go to this URL here, we have a playlist where we post all of the recordings of these webinars. So when we get this recording together, you'll get it as a follow-up because you were an attendee and you registered for this webinar. You'll get a follow-up tomorrow with the recording. But if you need to find any of the previous webinars or any of the ones we do in the future that you want to just watch the video, you can go to this playlist and we put everything there. So you can review them kind of at your leisure or share them. I know many of the folks that have been attending these, you actually work with students. So you may not be students yourselves, but you work with students. These are great tools and something that we highly recommend you use, share with your students. They are open source once they go on our YouTube website. So definitely encourage you to follow them, and we'll have a bunch of announcements coming out in the next few weeks about what's coming next, including we're going to host a special parent webinar in a couple weeks towards the end of the month, and we'll also be hosting a couple webinars with our clients too. So we encourage you to take a look at that, as well as if you do have access to Tutor.com through your employer, through the military, through a school or a college. Many of you have access to Tutor.com, and our tutors are on standby to help you with a lot of what Amy was talking about, and also your academics, right? You have a math problem or a big essay coming up. Tutors are ready to help you. And one of the things that I just want to echo before I ask Amy some questions here is some of the things she highlighted that I think are really important. One of the things, and we talked about this last week, was using your resources. A lot of times stress is about sitting alone with everything that's bottling up and not asking for help. And some people really struggle with asking for help because you don't want to overburden people, or there's a little bit of nervousness around it. You have a lot of resources out there, whether that's family, friends, or resources provided to you from your employer or your school or what have you. People are there to help, so take advantage of those resources. Tutoring is, what we do at Tutor.com. And I know a lot of people do express a little nervousness about using tutors, but that's what they're there for, right? That's what they come to work every day to help students. And that's the same if you're an advisor or it's your teacher or instructor or even your boss, right? People are there to help. They want to help, and they don't always know that you need the help, right? So just lean on your resources is one of the best tips. And I'm trying to use that and practice what Amy's been preaching to me in my life too, to help cope with stress. So looks like a lot of questions have come in. So I'm going to actually start asking our expert here a few questions.
Okay.
All right. Amy, any tips on building in exercise and sort of if there's a time of day that you think helps for the stress component, right? Like I know I usually go in the afternoon for a long walk with my dog because I've sort of gone through the whole day, but any tips on that?
Well, we do what's most important to us first thing in the morning, first thing in the day. And so there's a lot of research that shows exercise is best to do first, because otherwise, we've already talked about what willpower is like in the afternoon. I struggle with exercising in the afternoon, but that's just me. Everyone's a little bit different. I mean, Lauren, you don't have a struggle with going in the afternoon. You go and you do it. And maybe that's the perfect time for you just to take a deep breath and say, I'm going to walk away from work for a bit. I prefer to do it in the morning. And I just find that it helps me to feel relaxed for the rest of the day. So I like to take a really good walk. Where I live, it's kind of a hike. I like to do that every day. One of the first things, like right after I eat breakfast, and then I feel just a little bit more relaxed. And sometimes I need to go do it again. And I've been known to do it twice in a day for sure. So it's really up to you.
And kind of related, a couple questions here on exercise and how that ties to stress, but is there any sort of threshold for how long you should do that exercise? Or is it really just you got to sort of respond to what you need and how much time you have available to go clear your head?
Yeah, that's true. It is partially what you need. I think 30 minutes is a general kind of consensus from health experts that everybody needs 30 minutes of exercise a day, 30 minutes to get your heart rate up. So I would say try to start with at least that much. But that may be a stretch for you. You might say, I only have 20 minutes. Well, then give it 20 minutes. Do what you can. But I think it's good to start with 30. I think there's definitely, I've been known to go on like some serious bike rides that are like 2 hours long. And I would never do that on a work day because I come home and I'm so tired, I want to take a nap. So you have to kind of figure out, don't push yourself to the point where now you can't focus because you're exhausted. I think 30 minutes is probably a good start.
Yeah, I agree. So a couple questions here on the apps that you recommended. Maybe we can go back to that slide just to look at those again. And just out of curiosity, are there any costs associated with some of the ones that you would recommend, or are there other ones you might recommend here too?
Oh, that's great. No, all of these are free. There's in-app purchases. Like one of them, I feel like maybe it was Sanvello. I realized that there were like a lot of really cool programs and things you could do where it was, every day you would kind of get this maybe personalized, activity and stuff like that. That there was a cost with that. I didn't do any of those. I only looked at them just for what's available that's free and did that. So these are the only ones that I've tried, but I was just flipping through a magazine the other day and I saw another one in there. I thought, oh, okay, I should try that one too. And I don't remember what it was. I didn't try it at the moment, but I'm sure that if you just literally, when you go into your app store or whatever you have on your phone and you just start searching stress or, meditation, breathing, you're going to have, there's so many options and a lot of them are free.
That's great. One of the questions here, this is a tough question, I think, and can be a little bit specific, but maybe if there's some broad strategies, I know you've talked about this a little bit. So my middle schooler is struggling with isolation and independent study. Any tips about this age group? I think a lot of us are feeling some sense of isolation out there at times with, you know, not being able to be in person with a lot of folks or being stuck in your house a lot. So any tips that you would have for a little bit of the younger student, the middle school, early high school?
Well, I think, you know, it is tough, and I have a high school student, and there's times when I feel sad for the things he's sort of missing out on in life right now. You know, it's kind of a critical time where he would be doing so many things that he can't do. But I think, you know, I encourage and kids to play video games with their friends right now. I think that's kind of that's a big thing for kids, and I don't get it because I never did that as a kid, played video games with friends who were in different places. But I find that actually helps my son a lot. I can hear him laughing. He's talking to his friends. Sometimes they're on video calls and he feels like he's with them. And even there's some of his friends that don't even live in our state. They're friends that live where we used to live. And so he still does that. I think that's important. There's a social thing going on there. So I would, a lot of times we want to, during normal circumstances, limit our kids' screen time. And I would say you might want to stretch their screen time a little bit right now and allow them to have that. I think they need it. Zoom calls with family and friends. We've had a couple of family birthday parties with our family where we've played games and stuff like that through Zoom. And I think that helps everyone in the family to feel connected again. And then, you know, sometimes there's just some decisions you have to just make as a family. I have a college student, and, you know, we chose to let him move back to college, and he lives in an apartment off campus and all of his classes are online. And so it seemed kind of silly, but he needed that. And we've just had to be careful about when we let him come home and where he's been, because of course he's 19 and has, you know, thinks he's okay and will never get sick. But we had to just make a decision that he needed it. He couldn't just sit in the basement in his room in this house as a 19-year-old. So I think that, you know, that's a decision you have to make as a family and talk about. But yeah, any times you can think of ways to help your kids be social online right now, that's healthy. I mean, even video games, I think it's okay to do that.
One thing I've done with my friends, and I am not a middle school kid, but I do love movies and TV shows, and I usually do that with friends and groups.
Oh, that's cool.
So we've been using some of they have collaborative viewing apps now that can be built in, like Netflix Party is one where you can be watching the same thing and chatting at the same time as your friends. So I think if I was a kid, I would have found that very cool to be able to be chatting and talking about the thing we were watching at the same time, and it pauses
very cool.
together. So things like that I would recommend. In terms of academics, again, this is where I would say, because we're tutoring experts here, is a lot of you have access to tutoring through Tutor.com, because that's probably how you even heard about our webinar. Maybe not everybody here, but a lot of you do. And our tutors are there. They, you know, human tutors who can help with the academics. So even if your kid is working through a homework sheet and is having trouble staying focused, maybe go bring a couple problems and work with a tutor and have a conversation with somebody who really knows the math, just to make it a little more collaborative. And aside from tutors, you can also have kids pair up and have little mini study groups on Zoom too. So it doesn't have to be completely independent work.
That's true. A lot of families are choosing to do what we're calling pandemic pods, and they're, you know, getting together with neighbors or really close friends that they trust and getting their kids together regardless of the kid's age, you know, so they don't all have to be in the same grade, and just getting them together so they spend the day on their computers doing their remote learning, but kind of as a team. And so at least they can talk to each other, see each other. You know, that's an option too. Is to think about, is there anybody that you trust that you feel like, you know, I can send my kid over to that house for a few hours, even if they have, you know, younger children, just so there's just something different than the same four walls.
One other question here is related to what we've been talking about. So I'm just going to have that question, and then there's a whole bunch of other questions we'll try to get to. We still have good amount of time. So this one is about, are there other stress relievers for kids other than gaming? And, you know, I just gave my movie viewing take on it, but I think there's probably a lot of other things. And we actually did a webinar in the summer. This was around really young kids and how to sort of keep them focused. Our colleague Marianne hosted it because she's an expert in early childhood. And she came up with so many good ideas for really young kids that I think you could apply to middle school and even getting into high school, of really getting back to some of the sort of basics, doing art projects, doing science experiments, you know, things you do with your hands that are not typing. So I think some of those things are things, it's, you know, go buy some paint. Sometimes I collage, I take magazines and I cut things up and paste them. So some things like that are a good thing that takes you away from screen time and gets you back to doing some basic things. But Amy, you got anything for us?
Older kids. So I have older kids. So I'll tell you what I've done is exercise is still good for kids. We've done a couple things with our son. We challenged him to, like I told you, when we walk in our neighborhood, it's kind of a hike. It's really a hike. We live in a kind of on a steep street, and there's like this loop you can do, and it's about 1.5 miles. And we challenged our son, and we gave him like a money challenge, because our kids are really motivated by money. And we actually challenged both of our kids. My oldest chose not to do it, but my youngest one, we challenged him for 30 days to do that loop. And so he started doing it with me and walking. And then he decided he wanted to run it. And so he just did that on his own. He would get up in the morning and he would go run the loop, and he made it for 30 days. So that was cool. We also hired just a personal trainer for him who just writes up. It's super inexpensive because he just writes up little workouts, and we have some weights and stuff for him. And so he writes up the workouts and makes videos and then sends it to us. And then my son can just go and by himself do his workout. So these are still things he's doing by himself, but it's helping to relieve that stress and that, you know, sitting in a room doing school and gaming. So he gets out of the room. Now, he's pretty self-motivated, I will say that. So we've done that. There's just a couple of other little things. He also plays an instrument. So I find that, you know, that's really important to play an instrument and to get out of, you know, that same routine by, you know, doing that. Something musical, I highly recommend. And yeah, I think what Lauren said, if you have younger kids, just, you know, art projects, outdoor time going on. We had some neighbors who went on like a little scavenger hunt recently, and all the neighbors kind of participated without going too far outside of our houses, but we all put different things out, and they went on a little scavenger hunt, and that was cute. Our whole neighborhood did a chalk day where everybody decorated their driveways. So, I mean, you know, those are little things that you could start in your neighborhood maybe to help kind of break it up for your kids, get them outside.
We have a colleague here who is chiming in with some things she's done that don't cost you anything. So she has a 6-year-old, and she basically gives them the coin jar and has them count their coins. Good old fashioned, you know, things like that. No supplies needed, and baking and cooking as well. So Pam from our military team for those good tips.
Those are good.
Awesome. Okay, let's move back to people dealing with their own personal stress a little bit here. So sometimes I struggle with getting my objectives done in the time I set aside to complete them in the day, and it causes me to be stressed. So it's sort of like you've made a list, you are doing the plan, but you're just not quite getting through the whole plan. When it comes to putting pressure on yourself to complete the objectives in a timely manner, what advice do you have to increase your success rate? It's a big question.
Whew. That is a big question. Well, you have to give yourself grace, because everybody has days where you think you're going to do something and you get an email and it just blows your whole day up, right? Or something like that. I mean, we all have that happen, and that's okay that it did that. You just have to tell yourself, whoops, that's okay. I'm just going to do this now, and I'm going to do this later. What I do is block out certain times of my day that I'm going to do certain tasks, and I tell myself I'm going to do the best I can with this in this 2-hour block. And if I don't finish, then I'm going to put that on my calendar again for tomorrow. And then I'm going to move on to my next task. And I'm going to do that for this amount of time. I'm going to get as far as I can in it. And some things are small and quick and I just whip right through them. And other things are big, like, I'm working on a presentation and I might need to work on it for 5 or 6 days in a row for an hour or two. And so I just say, I'm just going to get as far as I can. So sometimes making a list is also blocking out the time for it and then telling yourself, it's okay if I don't finish. I'm going to put it on my calendar again tomorrow and just get through what you can. That way, at least if you have 5 things, at least you've touched all 5 things in that day. And maybe that will help you feel like you've been productive and not so hard on yourself. Okay, I touched all these 5 things that I said I was going to.
I actually think for that question too, just to refer back to some of these other webinars that we posted, and Amy, if you'd go forward to the slide that has our YouTube channel on it.
Got it.
I think the goal setting session and the time management session, Amy digs into some really good strategies for not biting off more than you can chew, kind of trying to have really achievable specific goals and also realistic timelines. So some strategies from those sessions may really help you. And again, they're really quick videos to review, 20, 25 minutes, and you can skim ahead in the YouTube. So our YouTube channel's up here. We posted all of the sessions from the series. You go to tutor.com/YouTube webinars, or just search for tutor.com on our YouTube, just like you see for our Instagram, same spelling. So the only other thing I would say about this, and this is just my own personal take, and we do this in our tutoring sessions too, but I think sometimes stopping and celebrating what you have achieved is going to help you stay motivated, stay focused on the larger goal. So we do that in tutoring sessions where a student comes in and they think that problem or that assignment or that project is too big, they can't do it. Well, if you start to break it down, as our tutors try to do, into smaller parts and then celebrate moving from step to step to step, it does help people stay motivated and realize I'm on the path here. I may not be as far as I wanted to be, but I'm on the path. So
that's right.
All right, we got a couple other ones. I think we'll take 2 more and then we're going to wrap for the day. So a couple questions here related to building that routine and how detailed you should be. So if you sort of plot out your day or your week and build that routine that helps you to get focused, do you have a sense of how specific or detailed you should get to make that achievable?
Yeah, I mean, I think the routine needs to be, if you are going to, need to have time for, you need to work, you need to have time for your kids or your family, you need to have time for your schoolwork, you need to have a time for your exercise. Those general buckets of time, I think, are the ones that you really need to be in a routine, because otherwise it's too easy to say, oh, I'm too tired to study tonight, so I won't, or I woke up and I just don't feel like exercising, so I won't. And the more of a routine you're in, the less questioning you have, the less you say, should I do this? It's no, I do this. I'm going to do it because I always do it. That's where a routine helps. Getting into like little minute details. I mean, it might work for some people and sometimes it does work for me, but other times like we just talked about before, that could stress you out thinking, oh, I'm 5 minutes late and I need to be doing this or I need to be doing that. And for me, I'm not a spontaneous person. I'm sure you can probably tell by now, but my husband is a spontaneous person and he helps me by just saying, hey, let's go do this. And sometimes I need to be able to drop something, I'm not a student anymore, so I'm not dropping my school, and I'm not leaving in the middle of the workday, but maybe it's like, I think I need to clean the bathroom and he'll be like, hey, let's go do this. And for me, I need to be able to do that because I need to have that. That's important in life, to be able to be spontaneous sometimes. It will never come from me. It's always him. But that's what makes us work, is that I keep him on track when we need to be, and he keeps me spontaneous when I need to be. So I guess the routine I'm trying to say is I would keep just buckets of time, buckets of things that you do every day, and then allow yourself some grace, allow yourself to have something that throws you off, allow yourself to have days where your brain's not there. And days when you're, maybe you don't feel well, these things happen, or days when you're just going to go be spontaneous and you're just going to go do something fun with your kids. Like, that's okay.
Awesome. Agree. And boy, have we learned a lesson of having to have a little bit of grace with all of ourselves and our friends and our family and our teachers and our everything else during this year that has been 2020. So last question here is, what do you do with stress that is out of your control? Like, how do you face managing that stress to some degree? If you have any tips on that, that's again a pretty hard question, but
it is, and I feel like I wish I was a psychologist because I probably have better. But like sometimes you have to turn it off. I mean, for example, I just can't watch the news every day. I just can't do it. It does stress me out, and I can't control it. So for me, sometimes I feel like I have to kind of avoid that and then turn it on when I just need to get, the latest, and then know when to walk away from it because I can't control it. So those kinds of things, I think you just have to know when to shut things off, when to turn your cell phone off, when to turn the TV off, and just know yourself. If you feel yourself getting stressed out about it, then it's time to change the channel, which was part of that TLC, talk about it, look for the silver lining, and then know that you've got to change that channel and start focusing on something that makes you feel good. That's really the best. It's all in your mindset. It's not like there's just a magic switch where you can suddenly say, I'm not going to think about that. But I mean, I've always been a really good compartmentalizer. And so I know that works for me, is just, I'm not going to think about that. I'm going to think about this, and I'm able to do that. But I know that that's not the norm. A lot of people can't just turn it off, but you have to work at it every day, working at it, thinking about it, consciously shifting your mindset.
I think that's a good point. Remove some of those distractions. Shut off the alerts from Facebook, or from the news, right? Shut those alerts off from the news. And I've been doing things like listening to audiobooks rather than listening to the news a little bit to help me feel better, and going to yoga every once and again, or doing yoga at home in my living room, which has been more common recently. I'm not recommending everybody because maybe you don't like yoga, but just, that wellness stuff, even if you only have a few minutes to do it, it's just going to help you, because there are going to always be things you can't control out there. So. Okay, Amy, thank you as always for these wonderful sessions. We're really excited for next week's session. Again, a little more academic on critical thinking and research, but it is the first time we're running that particular workshop. So we encourage you to attend. You'll get the recording tomorrow via email, as well as the slides, and also the invite if you want to sign up for the next session next week. Otherwise, take down our social media here, our YouTube channel, because we do post every session there as soon as the recording is ready. So thank you again, everyone, for participating. We hope it was helpful to you, and have a good rest of the weekend. Go do something that calms you down.
That's right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.